Hey everyone, welcome back to the Winner's Circle. I'm Derrick.
And I'm Cody.
And we're here with another Big Brother Canada eviction week. It was I don't want to say a boring week, but it wasn't the most action-packed, to say the least. There was a big blind side. There was an HOH who lost his mind.
Yeah.
We're going to get into all that. But this probably isn't going to be an hour episode because there really wasn't a ton. I mean, we watched all 3 episodes. A lot of fluff. And that happens. When you get less people in the house, sometimes there's some fluff that has to go in there, but there are a few competitions to talk about. There were a few interesting conversations. And as I mentioned, there was an original nomination and then a backdoor plan that went into play pretty perfectly. So we can dive right into it if you're ready.
Yeah, but first, before we dive into it, guys, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those bell notifications if you haven't done so already. It's the bell right next to the subscribe button. If you're subscribed, it should say subscribed ED. If you haven't done so, hit that subscribe. Turn on all notifications so you guys know exactly when we put out an episode, because this week, we're going to be putting out 2. We're putting out this episode, and then we really have to cover the week that is going on right now. We're a little bit behind, but with Big Brother Canada, like Derrick just said, it's not the same as Big Brother US. We don't have a huge audience for it, so we're really doing this for this intimate audience that really is following along, because we know it isn't that easy to watch Big Brother Canada, and we're kind of behind on it a lot because we can't watch it live due to our schedules. And so this past week with Marty, I think the best way to summarize it is that Big Brother is not for everybody. And I think we saw with Marty this week on his HOH that, he wants to play an honest game, but he also knows that he shouldn't play an honest game. So he does things that make him like boil his blood. And then when it doesn't go his way, then he projects that onto other people and really has a violent, angry aggression towards them. And it just goes to show that Big Brother's not for everybody. Like Marty lost his mind this week.
And this does happen to people, right? Where they start off okay. Like Marty was someone I liked in the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily dislike him, but
Right.
You get to that like 30-day point, 40-day point where you start to lose yourself because you're trapped inside this cage, and it's a lot of pressure 24/7. Some people can handle it. Some people can't. Real quickly, and I didn't write a lot of notes for this, but I just wrote down eviction aftermath, and I wrote house meeting chaos. Josh, Marty, Kevin, Helena, Betty. What was it? Something went on with the vote, right?
So essentially what happened was, remember in last week's episode, you and I were talking about why did Marty vote for Gino and why did Helena vote for Gina? And
that's right.
Honestly, it was because we're not, again, catching up a ton on the feed. Shoot us, don't literally shoot us, but we're watching these episodes, and I thought Marty kind of, I don't even know what Marty was thinking, and Helena I just thought was lost. Ultimately, we find out that there was a huge plan kickstarted by Kevin. Like another catalyst was Josh, Betty, Marty, Helena. They were all supposed to flip and vote out Gino over Jess.
That's right.
Marty stuck to it. Betty, Josh, and Kevin all got cold feet. Helena stuck to it. And so they never talked about it. And why they got cold feet, I don't really know. It just came out of nowhere because like Marty wouldn't make eye contact with Betty, and Betty was a catalyst of it. And as we know up to this point, and still further on until she either wins the game, which would be mind-blowing, or loses, she is just emotional and very confused. She was like, Marty won't make eye contact with me, so I'm not voting. So then she said that to Josh. Josh and Kevin were sitting right there. So those 3 figured out we're not doing it anymore. They never told Marty and Helena. The funniest part about this whole thing is when they showed us the recap, all 5 of them walked one in and out. They all crossed paths before they went in and voted.
That's right.
And so I was like, you guys are clueless. You all are clueless that, I don't know, Marty wouldn't look at me. Hi, you cross paths with him. Maybe ask. I don't know. It just shows there's some people that are playing really well, Kevin, and there's some people that are just lost, and that's just how it's going right now. So that was the recap and what all happened, and Gino was trying to get to the end of it.
Well, and that he was trying to figure it out, and thank you for reminding me. That's what it was, because what happened was, and I don't know why he did this, but Marty folded. And after he wins HOH, he admits to Gino, I backstabbed you again. Why? And that's where the house meeting came in, because Gino got the 1 vote. He knows the 1 person. So now they're all sitting in the room.
There were 2 house meetings.
Yeah, that's right. There were 2 house meetings. The initial,
where Marty kind of was like, no, I didn't do it, because Marty told him like all the names. He was like, it was Kevin, it was Josh, it was Betty, it was Helena, it was me. And so then Gino grabs all of them into a room. They have the initial house meeting where everybody went deny. Then Marty wins the HOH. And then
Yes.
Marty's like, no more denying. I can't live with this on my conscience. Like, Marty is a nut. And then he like started, what did you think of when he's like talking to Kevin and he's like, and that's why I stayed in this house to get them out. Smashes the table and everybody's like, how was that? Was that the HOH?
Yeah, he's like, how's that for an answer? And Kevin, honestly, we'll talk about Kevin when we get there, but man, he is stepping up. His
Big
composure in that conversation was great. But you know, it's funny because Marty says in that second house meeting, like, I was one vote, and you know what? The person who's the second vote, you're gonna pay for that. And they're like, okay, Marty, whatever you say. But no, he's losing his mind, and I wonder if Marty is losing himself because it feels to me at least like Marty's playing two games. He's trying to win the game, the Big Brother champion game, but also America's favorite house guest game, where he's constantly, I'm going to look at the camera and I'm going to tell them straight out what I did, and all this stuff, because he's like trying to walk through this with Canada, because I really think he wants to be liked. And I feel like he's seeing that his behavior and his actions towards Gino with the backstabbing and others, it's probably not coming off well. And now he's like, you know what? I got to go to Gino and clear my conscience because Canada's probably looking at me like I'm a scumbag. So I get it. But him telling Gino that at that point, that was stupid. I wrote down here, Marty confesses, Marty loses his mind. Marty actually also lets Gino, he gets Gino in the room and says, hey, you can decide who the nominations are going to be. Mm-hmm. And Gino suggests that it should be Josh and Moose. Mm-hmm. But that's not really what
the things that
Marty
I
wants
don't
to
love
do.
about. Yeah. So now we move forward to the nominations, and Marty has this conversation with Gino and says, I'm going to do whatever you want this week. You and Jace, you two, you tell me what to do. Then
because I burned you.
Yeah, because I burned you. So this is how I'm going to repay you. I lied to you and I almost voted you out, but this is how I'm going to repay you. I'm going to put who you want on the block.
Whoever you want up. You just say it.
That's not how this works. Okay. So then we get to the nomination ceremony. Marty's just, Kevin said he's very easily manipulated because Moose gets up in the room and just talks him right off the ledge.
Yep. Talks him right out.
So now we get to the nomination ceremony and Marty just thinks, he thinks with his heart and his emotions and his thought process, which is off base. And it's because he's blinded just by being inside of the walls of Big Brother, which, hey, we have all been there. The paranoia, we get that. But he ultimately decides, I promise Gino and Jason, I'm going to do what they want. Then I nominate, not who they tell me to, other than I guess
exactly.
Josh. And it ends up being Betty and Josh on the block. And then we see the blow up between Betty and Marty.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Betty and Marty.
Betty.
Add it to the list of Betty's blow ups.
I mean, I'm like, Betty, you were a catalyst of it. Okay. Marty did vote the other way. Correct. You were right in all your statements, Betty. But it ended you on the block. You're going back at Marty being like, you're going to have to live with what you did, blah, blah, blah. And Marty literally said in his speech, I understand I did this, but I feel like I was duped by you two. So now boom. And Betty's literally just repeating back to him what he ultimately said in the nomination. I was like, Betty, please just stop doing whatever you're doing. I don't know her personally, but my goodness, she grinds my gears watching her in episodes.
Yeah, she's tough. She's tough to watch. And it's funny because I will say this in her defense. Marty's going so hard at her for, bamboozling him. It was your boy, Kevin.
Yeah,
your boy, Kevin was like, hey, we doing this? It was Kevin. And even Kevin says on the show, he has a selective memory because I was the one in the room pushing the whole, flip on Gino. Mm-hmm. And Marty completely is leaving that part out because I don't know if he just didn't pick up on it or he's trying to protect his friend. But even behind closed doors, Marty doesn't make it seem like, hey, Kevin, you were the guy. I'm just keeping you out of it.
I think Marty's just he just gets too emotional and then he has a clouded version of actually what happened. But the thing I will say about a little bit of a game thing with Josh is when you get put up, if you're on the block, just remain quiet because Josh stayed quiet the whole time that Betty had her blow up. And ultimately what we saw was the target immediately pointed right at Betty. And Marty was like, I want the nom to stay the same. I want Betty gone. That's who I want to go home. And so if you're going to get nominated, just don't do what Betty did. But there's a lot of different things that Betty does that we can talk about. I think a lot of strategic players that are watching the game aren't going to take something out of Betty's hat of Big Brother strategy. And so
before you get to the veto, I wanted to ask you about it. What do you think of the conversation between Marty and Summer? Because Marty was on a tear.
Horrible. Well, it was so poor.
I was shocked by that.
It just showed a lot that Marty has just lost his mind. Marty is super aggressive. But we knew that Marty would be aggressive right when he won that first HOH, and he had that, like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he won the HOH, then something happened, and you saw like a hair of it, and you were like, uh-oh, this guy might have a temper. And then when he brought up Summer, and Summer is just coming up to extend an olive branch, it was a complete lie on Jessica's part, and they showed the video footage, which I love, because when it was going on, I was like, oh, please show the footage of that. Like, please let us know who's in the wrong here, because we're not watching the feeds, and I don't know that Wendy's date was a part of the show. When they showed,
it was like a big party,
right? Because there was other stuff going on. I think it was more about Moose and different things of that sort when Jessica was the HOH. And so Jessica essentially just completely lied to Marty. Then they showed Summer's conversation. And then Marty gets so aggressive and then tells her, leave the room. I will tell you this. I am so proud of how Summer handled that. She was a class A1 and class A game. Like, the way that she reacted to that, and then she went downstairs, she blew her lid a little bit, which is totally fine.
Happens.
In that moment, bro, if that happened to one of us, we would have went downstairs and blew our lid to somebody that we felt comfortable with. Because like Marty accused her, didn't hear her out, immediately took it as truth, and then literally just started yelling at her and then kicked her out of the room.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, he was just gone. He was just gone.
For everybody out there who may be an HOH one day, if it isn't already very clear to you, if you win HOH and you nominate two people, and after said nomination, you have someone else in the room, you don't tell them, hey, by the way, if it wasn't for this, I would have nominated you. Because you're not eligible for HOH the next week. So, by the way, you just gave them all the ammo they need to put you up. Don't do that.
You're 100% right. And if anyone is watching this Big Brother Canada and you're from Canada and you want to put into the next season, or you may be a Big Brother US person that's just following along, which we know we have those as well. If you can catch 3 weeks in this house, it is the classic do not of how to run an HOH. It's Kyle, it's Jessica's, and it's Marty's. Marty's second.
They really are
HOH.
putting on a clinic. They really are putting on a clinic.
Right? Like those three have put on the classic 101s of like, don'ts. There's no do's really. There were some do's with Jessica. I do want to give her credit. And she wasn't even as, so I would say it was probably Kyle or maybe Marty second. They're arguably 1 and 2, and then Jessica's HOH. But
yeah.
And only
dive into the POV
because of the whole like no relationships, and then I want this information and then I'm going to use it against you.
Yeah, no, her HOH was not my favorite HOH, and it's one of those things where I agree with you. Jess's HOH, not nearly at the level of Kyle and Marty. So
yeah, so now we get to the veto.
At least we're learning something about, what not to do. Sometimes you're going to learn something here about the winner's circle about what you should do. Sometimes all you got to do is watch the episodes.
And there it is.
And do the opposite.
Exactly.
Veto was pretty self-explanatory. There wasn't a lot to cover in there. I thought it was a cool veto. Kind of reminded me of Survivor, if you're a fan of Survivor, where they have like the rope, where you got to balance the different things. There was a spelling error on this one where Gino would have had the dub.
Who knows about that?
A few people you have.
What was my word that I spelt wrong?
Oh man, you're so much better at that than me. I know it was the Miami Lice competition.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I do not remember. Bro. I do not remember what the word was, but you.
Oh, it was competitively. And I spelled competitively. I spelled competitively instead of competitively.
Right. And he had something where he forgot. What was the word for nominations?
He had it, but he spelled NOMENIES. It was like nominees.
Yeah.
That way.
Nominees. He had it. He had the W.
Yeah.
And he unfortunately does not win. Kevin does. And no, that's a good thing, because Kevin wants to make some moves in this house. He needed some power. And by the way, if he wants to win this game, he's probably going to need some competitions under his belt. Does he have any competitions? No, he was never an HOH. No. He hasn't won any vetoes. So that's good. He's getting close to halfway through the season.
The thing I love about Kevin is that he's been making moves behind the scenes, and now he needs some of those comps where you say, like, you were thinking this because you were doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and then you were like, I want some comps where people see what I'm doing right up in the forefront. And so if Kevin can do that, Kevin's going to be like a shoo-in to win this game.
Yeah, Kevin's a front runner right now. He really is, because he's not even on the top of anybody's radar. They all know he's kind of sleazy, but none of them are like really targeting him. He's kind of like everybody's friend, which is exactly where you want to be. So after Kevin wins veto, there's a couple conversations that happen, but basically my takeaway was Helena and Kevin played the hell out of Marty.
Yeah.
They completely get him in his head. They start convincing him that Herman is the right person to go after,
right?
Which is not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
And so Herman has a convo with, I believe it's with, I'm trying to remember who it was. I have my notes here. Was it with Marty? But he was very cocky about it. You think you're safe, but you're not. Something along those lines where there was a conversation between Herman, I think it was, and Marty, where basically Herman gets the gist that he's going to get nominated, or
no, it was Marty.
He guarantees him safety.
He guarantees him safety. Well, they had a deal early on where he guaranteed him safety, but then they had a conversation later where Herman leaves and does the whole arrogant thing. It's right before the nomination, and he goes,
"What does he say?
I'm good." He goes, "I'm good." And Marty, we got a deal for a week, but guess what? I might have a surprise for you next week.
Yes.
Let me tell you, you're not gonna like it. And I was like, Herman, this is a classic 101 of when you should never play the game of Big Brother ever and feel 100% safe. If you are playing the game and feel good and 100% safe, you put your feet up and you turn off slightly, and that's just enough for you to maybe miss a cue, not catch a conversation that's happening, not be aware of other conversations and seeing, wait, Kevin won the veto. Okay, they're super tight. Maybe I should grease up Kevin. Maybe I should grease up Marty this whole time. He ultimately had that conversation like right before the replacement nomination, veto ceremony.
Whenever you feel safe, man, that's when you get backstabbed. That's when you get, because you should never, everyone always asks me like, when did you know you were going to win Big Brother 16? And I'm like, honestly, not until Cody won that final. That was the only point that I knew I was in a very good spot. Yeah. But it was one of those things where you truly don't know. I didn't truly know. I didn't truly know I had to win. Like, I was like, yo, I got this, was until I heard the questions from jury.
Yeah.
And the way they were so like one-sided, where I was like, oh, I don't have to say anything. They're coming after Cody.
They're coming. Whoa.
But I mean, for is that fair to say? I mean, coming back, playing against All-Stars, you never were nominated. You won a ton of competitions, but didn't you always feel like I'm going home?
Not one time. Not one time. I was always in full-blown defense mode because I was always like, okay, when I get to this aspect of the game, then I'm going to be in the second phase of the game. And then at that point, somebody in that I could be working with may decide to turn on me. So I got to make sure I hedge my bets there. Then we get to the third phase of the game, and that's where I got to really hedge my bets because then we all start imploding on each other. Then after that phase of the game, when it's like final four, final three, I'm like, I got to make sure I sit in this final seat so you don't ever turn off. And Herman got arrogant, cocky. We saw it last week when he was doing his dance, and people in the comments didn't like that we mentioned that because people pick up on it. And guess what? You weren't noticing. Maybe you're not checking the feeds. Maybe it's not covered in the live show, but you weren't noticing how it was rubbing people the wrong way, how Herman was acting, and what his relationships were like in the house. Everybody I will say this.
I will say this. Some people are like, oh, why aren't you calling out Marty? We've already admitted we're not watching a ton of the feeds. We saw it on the episode. We're not saying Marty's a saint either, but, again, we're not covering the feeds. And some may say, oh, well, if you're not covering the feeds, you shouldn't cover the show.
Go watch the other episodes that are covering the feeds.
Yeah, we don't care. Yeah, so we're doing it our way.
We're heavy into Big Brother US. Right now, we're not going to be spending the time that we're going to be spending in Big Brother US on Big Brother Canada.
Right. And we do have to make more of an effort to watch the feeds for US.
Yeah.
It's tough though.
And we have an announcement coming up about a little bit of the feeds in this channel.
The feeds will be covered this year.
Yeah. The feeds are we're going to have a live feed correspondent.
Yes.
How you doing? So we're leveling up. We're not even in our first year of this show of the Winner's Circle. So we're going to be leveling up. So everybody take a back seat and relax.
And by the way, Herman was my pick to win. Herman was my favorite player. I still don't mind Herman on a personal level. I would do an interview with Herman tomorrow. We're going to get to why I can't, but ultimately, I have no issue with anyone, even Betty. We don't care. We don't know these people. Yeah. But from a game perspective, watching the show, I think it's okay to say like Herman started off where he had like this strategy. He was going to do the sales pitch. He was he was being himself, but not over the top. He is a very theatrical person. Even on the first HOH ever won, he was all pumped up. But you got to reel that stuff in because as the game progresses, people will look for things that give them a reason to target you. And it might be the smallest thing. We talked about it last week with me and Caleb with the lip smacking. It could be something small or it could be something big. Well, if I'm sitting there and I watch you win a veto and you're going up to Jess, shaking her hand, being like, hey, thanks for not, I would take that as me as a competitor, like an athlete. I would be like, oh, you think you're that guy?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
100%.
I'll get the opportunity eventually, and we'll see if you can get off when I put you up there.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a human element of it, and that is Big Brother. So,
and it has nothing
against Herman.
Yeah.
He forgot what he was doing. Great DR though.
Bro, but I mean, my favorite part is the people that commented anything about the negative stuff that we had to say about Herman. That was the first time we've ever covered anything Herman in a negative light. And so,
and if we didn't, people would say that we're only giving compliments to the guys. And not
exactly. And the thing was, is like somebody had a big comment that really bothered me. I'm not going to get into it because it's not on the channel anymore. And it was like it was so clear that this person just watched one of our episodes and didn't watch previous episodes, because in it, they mentioned like microaggressions, and we never said anything about Kyle, and we crucified Kyle. And I was like, was like, this person so clearly is not watching. And so I was like, you don't get any light. And I was right there. I was like, oh, I had a big comment written, but I didn't. They're off the channel. And anybody that wants to come to this channel and bring any of these like social like words that are like kind of like trigger words and put those in the comments just because you see two white guys covering something, you'll be banned from our channel. We don't have time for that. Not on this channel.
We're all about constructive criticism. There are comments on all of our videos. You can go look at them where people are criticizing us about not watching the feed, saying we don't know what we're talking about, all that stuff. It all stays. Ultimately, you have the right to post whatever you want. We have the right not to look at it. It's that simple. And I mean, you may not like that,
not allow anybody else to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. You can go do it on your own thing. And you might say like, oh, that's not, listen, mental health works for everybody. We talk about mental health for the people that we're covering. We're also talking about us. It doesn't feel good to go on there and have people accuse you of things that are completely untrue, and they're based on just speculation on the part. So we don't know these people. We don't owe them anything.
We react to what's on the live shows, and we've said this multiple times, because there's stuff comes up on the live shows and they're like, well, you didn't even know any context of what had happened. And it's like, yes, we did not, and we apologize.
but that will change.
And that will change for Big Brother US. But that's right now, we're just watching what we see, and we're reacting to it as two people that have played the game. And I'll tell you what.
And we did all right at it. We did okay at it.
Well, but maybe we could get a second chance to do a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh my God, that was arrogant. now we're dancing around like idiots. Anyway, but
cocky, you're cocky.
Yeah. So now we end up with the veto is used. Kevin uses the veto.
Yep.
And
it's a real blind side.
It's a big blind side. Herman, so even though you knew it was coming, when you see a blindside happen and you see the look on Herman's face, I was like, this sucks. Because again, Herman was someone that we've liked, someone that you picked, and then to see him get blindsided and almost look like it was like a kid, like a young kid. I was like, oh man. I was like, that sucked.
Yeah, he was processing. He's like, did they all know? Maybe they all knew. He was sitting up on the.
But he's a fighter, man, and his points were spot on in his campaigns, right? Like his conversation with Summer was great. His conversation with Jacey-Lynne was great. And it was also true. So all these conversations were exactly what was happening behind the scenes. And her mom was hitting them. He was hitting the nails on the head.
If he was up against anybody who else was considered a competitor or someone that people were in fear of, he might have stayed, because even Gino said to Jacey-Lynne, like, he's a salesman. Just be careful. He's like really good. And he is. But unfortunately, he was sitting next to Betty. And we've said it from day one. I know Betty thinks she's like running things and she's got a thing going, and she's, maybe she ends up winning the season. But from our angle, she hasn't really done much. She hasn't won any competitions. And so therefore, the house guests, they're saying it, don't really view her as a threat. So when you have Herman, who almost is convincing you to keep him, and you have Betty, you're going to consider, who can I beat going forward? Who can I beat if I'm sitting on the block next to? And they're thinking, hey, I don't want to be on the block next to Herman because he can get himself off. So we get to the live eviction. And by the way, before we get to the live eviction, Kevin's just killing it. We should talk about him for a couple minutes.
Let's talk a little bit about Kevin.
He's absolutely killing it. They're starting to give him the mastermind edit.
He's getting the edit.
They're starting to give him the mastermind edit. Well deserved. He's explaining to us what he's doing, why he's doing it, how he's doing it. And for the most part, everything is going according to plan. I loved the conversation with him and Herman, where Herman's standing up on the top deck. Kevin walks over and, he's like, oh, can I give you a hug or whatever? He's like, oh, did you know? And he's like, and he straight up tells him, I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. And he's like, but why or whatever. He's like, well, listen, he kind of throws a little dig at him, but a good, respectful one. Like, you always say you don't like me because I play things close to the chest. My card's close to the chest. I'm going to keep this card close to the chest
And
too.
tell me if you don't agree with me on this, but that's the kind of thing that Herman will take back to the jury house. And as he's racking his brain, if Kevin's sitting there at the end, he'll go from, oh, I'm pissed that I got knocked out and time passes to, man, Kevin really played me. That's where my vote's going, period. Right?
Yeah,
Because that was like
more people are gonna be saying it too. Like Kevin got me. So
yeah. There was one other conversation with Kevin though that I really, really loved, and it was right along the lines of, I literally saw it and was like, we've talked about this multiple times. Derrick actually said this with me once, and it was a conversation that Kevin had in order to kind of parlay Marty into coming to the senses himself about getting Herman up. And Marty gave him what he wanted to do. And Kevin goes, listen, I don't know if that's it, but I'm with you. If that's what you want, I 100% am going to do whatever you tell me you want. I just don't know. It's like, here's your wall. Let me bring it down a little bit. Okay, maybe, and then it down a little bit more. Figure it out yourself. But I just literally told you everything to come to the conclusion yourself. And I loved it because he used some verbiage that we always use on this show when we're talking about things that you did and then things that I took and I did on All Stars. And you're seeing Kevin literally do that. And it's brilliant. I love that conversation. You remember the one I'm talking about when
I know exactly what
it was
like,
awesome.
I'll do whatever you want.
Yes.
I'll do whatever you want. Because what you're doing there is you're planting a seed, right? But you're also not being over aggressive, because what happens when you guys are in there, and some of you will be in the house, if someone's pushing something too hard and they're not willing to see another side, it almost makes you not want to do it, because you're thinking, oh, this is a chess. There's something going on here that clearly I'm not aware of, because they're pushing for this way too hard. Where if you genuinely say, listen, whatever you want to do, I got your back, but just think about this, and you leave it at that and you don't push it overtly, sometimes, and if they trust you, they will come to the same conclusion. It doesn't always work. There were times where there were things done that I didn't necessarily want or thought was best for my game, but you can't push too hard, because then that person will start to question your motives.
Yep.
And if you lose them, all you have is trust. So if you lose that, you might as well just vote them out, because they're going to come after you eventually.
Yeah. So that was one of the conversations that really stuck out to me between Kevin and Marty, that just showed what level of player Kevin is really becoming, and he's getting the edit. So
yeah,
they see it too.
The producers definitely see it. They think he's a front runner for sure. There's a couple people in there. I mean, he's definitely, in my opinion, the front runner, but even Herman said it. I mean, I guess we should get to this part first. Yeah. There is a vote, live eviction, no surprise here. Herman goes home unanimously. I will say, to Herman's credit, that he was starting to get a little overboard as far as I'm concerned, but he was humbled. He was humbled by the back door. I think he had some time to think about some things, and I love the way he left the house. He wasn't bitter. He made some passive comments about certain people not having a chance to win if they don't start winning, but overall, I thought it was tasteful. It was comedic in a way. He went out on a positive note. That's the way you want to do it, because it is just a game. So as much as we grilled him a little bit last episode about being a little over the top, I thought that was a good way to go out.
So, right? You said what could end up happening, and it happened a week later.
Yeah.
So not to toot your horn, but it's like, you picked Herman. You didn't want that to happen, but you just gave the scenarios of what was forming and how it could end up not going in his favor, and it ultimately didn't.
Yeah, trust me, wasn't happy. I was trying to go 2 for 2, and you picked Josh, right?
Yeah, but I don't see Josh winning for the reasons why we explained last week.
I don't know though. He could slither by, man. He's someone they keep putting up, but they don't take a shot at him.
I can see Josh going to the end, but I cannot see Josh winning in the end. That's how I see Josh. I see Josh, and I explained it a little bit in depth last week. If you want to go back to our last Big Brother Canada episode, it's just because what we talked about. I don't know that he's really the game player. He's just a super likable one. And so that may get him to the end. But if he's sitting next to, anybody outside of maybe like a Betty, I even think Helena showed this week a little bit of her game and how she realized, oh, I wanted to be a floater for a while, but now I see an opportunity for me to plant seeds with Marty, because she had as much a credit to getting Herman up as I thought Kevin did, because Helena is super tight with Marty as well, and she's the one that initiated the conversation in the shower. And so
that's a good point to point out, by the way. It's a great point, because we give Betty a little shit. Helena is someone that may be viewed by others as not playing the game. She's playing the game.
Yeah. just
Helena's
not
playing the game
in an in-your-face kind of a way, which you don't need that right now. It's still 9 people are left or 8 people are left now with Herman going home.
Plenty of time. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. And I think Helena is, I think, and I apologize, and I'll say it when I was wrong. Last week, I was like, Helena just showed how she's lost. My foot was in my mouth, and now it's out. And I can say, I apologize to Helena because she obviously is gaming and just got duped by the whole scenario because a bunch of people got cold feet.
Quick thing. I think that wraps up the week, right? So we have that. Spoilers coming up in a second. So we appreciate everyone who checked that out. If you don't want to hear the spoiler, although we're recording this right now, it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
So we're behind, so you probably already know. But spoiler coming up. Here we go. Gino wins HOH this week. It was like a before and after. He ends up nominating Summer and Moose. I'm pretty confident from what I was seeing, Helena wins veto. So tomorrow's another eviction. She's already probably either used the veto or not used it.
Yeah.
I'm not caught up on that. I don't think
I'm not caught up on it as well. So we'll find out.
We'll find out. But I mean, overall, it's getting interesting. I will say they're playing the game. It's not the cleanest game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it has been fun to watch. Any final words on your part?
No, I'm really enjoying the sloppy and chaotic, but with a lot of strategy also involved. You see a lot of strategy being used, but it also was very entertaining because there's drama. And that's what we want when we watch Big Brother, right?
This season has not lacked drama. You are not wrong there.
Yeah.
We're enjoying it. They may not be enjoying it in the house. We're definitely enjoying watching it, though.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Guys, as always, we apologize if we know we're a little late on this. Again, it's BB Cam. We know it's not everyone's cup of tea. We can see it with the views that are down. We get it. We read it, but we're trying to get us over to Big Brother US. It's coming up soon. Like Cody said, we have some announcements coming as far as a live feed correspondent we're bringing on. We think you're going to be excited about it. So keep tuning in. As Cody said in the beginning, make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you joining us here on the Winner's Circle. We will see you next week.